Mark stared at the resignation letter in his trembling hands, the weight of his decision crushing his chest. Behind him, his 7-year-old daughter Emma slept peacefully, unaware that her father had just made the hardest choice of his life. If you've ever had to choose between your career and your family, this story might just break your heart, and then put it back together again. Stay with me until the end for a twist that changed everything for this struggling single dad. If this story resonates with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to support more content that reminds us what truly matters in life. 3 months earlier, Mark Davidson had been the rising star at Horizon Technologies. As senior project manager, he'd spearheaded the company's most ambitious software launch to date. His colleagues admired his sharp mind and dedication, while his boss, CEO Richard Winters, had personally mentored him for 5 years. But everything changed when Mark's ex-wife suddenly moved across the country, leaving him as Emma's sole caretaker. The transition had been brutal. Emma cried herself to sleep most nights, struggling to adjust to her mother's absence. Mark's parents lived hours away, and childcare costs were astronomical. His carefully constructed work-life balance crumbled overnight. "Daddy, are you going to miss your meeting again?" Emma asked one morning, her small face pinched with worry as Mark frantically made calls while burning their breakfast toast. "No, sweetie, I'll make it work," he promised, though they both knew it was likely another empty assurance. That day, Mark missed not one but 2 critical client meetings. His team covered for him, but the strain was showing. His performance reviews, once stellar, had slipped to needs improvement. The late nights catching up on work after Emma went to bed were taking their toll. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his once immaculate appearance had grown disheveled. Richard had been patient at first. "Family comes first, Mark. We'll work around it," he'd said. But as weeks turned into months, the patience wore thin. Mark overheard whispers in the break room, rumors of his imminent demotion or termination. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Emma's school called. She had a fever of 103 degrees Fahrenheit and needed to be picked up immediately. Mark was in the middle of presenting to the company's biggest potential client. "I'm sorry, I have to go," he announced, closing his laptop mid-sentence. Richard's face had hardened. "Mark, this account is worth millions. Surely someone else can get your daughter?" The silence in the conference room was deafening. Mark looked around at his colleagues, at the client representatives, and finally at Richard, the man who had once told him that integrity mattered above all else. "No," Mark said quietly. "There is no one else." He left the building with his security badge still clipped to his belt, certain he'd just torpedoed his career. Emma's small, feverish body curled against his chest as he carried her from the school nurse's office, and in that moment, he knew he'd made the right choice. That night, after giving Emma her medicine and tucking her in, Mark wrote his resignation letter. His savings would cover 3 months of expenses, enough time, he hoped, to find something with more flexibility, even if it meant a significant pay cut. "I hereby tender my resignation, effective immediately," he typed, his fingers heavy on the keyboard. "While I have valued my time at Horizon Technologies, I must prioritize my responsibilities as a father." The email sent with a soft ping that seemed to echo through his quiet apartment. Mark closed his laptop and went to check on Emma, brushing damp hair from her forehead as she slept. For the first time in months, despite the uncertainty ahead, he felt a strange sense of peace. 2 days passed in a blur of job applications and caring for Emma as her fever broke. Mark had expected an automated response from HR acknowledging his resignation, but his inbox remained eerily empty. No exit interview scheduled, no instructions for returning company property. Nothing. On the 3rd evening, as Mark was helping Emma with her homework at the kitchen table, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, he saw Richard Winters standing in the hallway, still in his impeccable suit despite the late hour. Mark's heart hammered against his ribs as he opened the door. Had he forgotten to return something? Was there legal trouble? "Richard, I accepted your resignation," Richard interrupted, his voice steady. But I'm not accepting losing you. Mark blinked, certain he'd misheard. I don't understand. Richard's professional demeanor cracked slightly. May I come in? Emma peeked around the corner, curious about their visitor. Richard smiled and waved at her before turning back to Mark. 5 years ago, Richard began once they were seated in Mark's modest living room, my wife left me with our son. He was 6. I nearly lost everything trying to balance being a single parent with running a growing company. Mark stared, speechless. In all their years working together, Richard had never mentioned this. The difference was, I owned the company, Richard continued. I could make my own rules. You don't have that luxury. Emma had returned to her homework, occasionally glancing at the two men talking in hushed tones. Mark, I didn't come here as your CEO. I came as someone who's walked in your shoes. Richard leaned forward. I should have seen the signs earlier. I should have remembered how it feels. I appreciate that, Richard, but I've made my decision. Emma needs me. And Horizon needs you. But not at the cost of your family. Richard pulled out his tablet and opened a document. This is a new position. Director of Remote Operations. Flexible hours, 3 days working from home, and a 20% raise to cover additional childcare costs. Mark's mouth went dry. You created a position for me? No, Richard corrected. I created a position our company needs, and you're the best person to fill it. The board approved it this morning. Your resignation gave me the push to finally implement changes I've been considering for years. But the client meeting. We landed the account, Richard said with a small smile. Your integrity impressed them. Apparently, their CFO is a single parent too. Mark felt something loosen in his chest, a knot of tension he'd carried for months. There's one condition, Richard added. You need to help me develop a comprehensive family support program for all our employees. No one should have to choose between being a good parent and having a career. Emma appeared at Mark's elbow, homework in hand. Daddy, I finished my math. Mark pulled her into a side hug, meeting Richard's eyes over her head. What do you think, Emma? Should Daddy keep working with Mr. Winters? Emma studied Richard seriously. Does that mean you won't be sad anymore when you come home from work? The simple question hit Mark like a physical blow. He hadn't realized how much his stress had affected her. Richard knelt to Emma's level. I promise to help make sure your dad has time for both his job and for you. Maybe you can even visit the office sometimes. We have an awesome game room. Emma's face lit up. Can I, Daddy? For the first time in months, Mark felt hope replacing desperation. We can figure it out together. Later, after Emma was in bed and the details had been discussed, Richard paused at the door. You know, Mark, I almost lost my son's childhood to my ambition. I don't want that for you. He handed Mark a business card with a personal number scribbled on the back. Single dad to single dad, call me anytime. We're not just colleagues anymore. As the door closed behind Richard, Mark leaned against it, the weight on his shoulders lighter than it had been in months. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time, he didn't feel alone in facing them. 6 months later, Horizon Technologies launched its Family First initiative, offering flexible schedules, emergency childcare, and parent mentorship programs. Applications from top talent poured in, and employee retention reached an all-time high. The program became a case study in business schools across the country. And on Emma's 8th birthday, she proudly gave a tour of her father's new office to her grandparents, a space with family photos on the walls and a small desk in the corner where she could do her homework while her father finished his workday. My daddy helps other daddies and mommies spend more time with their kids, she told them, beaming with pride. Mark caught Richard's eye across the room during the small celebration. The CEO raised his coffee mug in a silent toast, one single father to another, acknowledging the journey they'd both traveled and the better workplace they were building together. Sometimes, the bravest decision isn't walking away, but allowing others to walk alongside you. And sometimes, the people we least expect become the ones who understand us most. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more content that celebrates the human connections that make life meaningful. Remember, in a world that often asks us to choose between success and family, there are people working to create a future where we can have both.